Hello, church. We are together in this place and we want to provide you with our State of the Conference. We regret that we cannot be doing this from Sonoma State University, but Reverend Davena Jones, Reverend Daniel Ross Jones, and myself are here to be able to share with you some of the things that we've been doing together in this conference over the past year. We're going to organize our day in the form of our mission statement: support, unite, and nurture. And we're going to talk about the ways that we have together been working to support churches, the way we've been working together to nurture our authorized ministers, and the ways that we've been working together to unite for justice. And it's going to be a little bit of a conversational style because we don't have you to be talking with, so we're going to share the state of the conference by talking to one another. So join us, and if you have any questions, feel free to send them to agfeedback@ncncucc.org or to any one of us, and we'll be happy to answer them. All right, so we're going to get started talking about the work that we've been doing to support our churches for this past year since we last met at annual gathering in June of 2019. Feels like such a long time ago, doesn't it?
It could have been
It
June of this
does.
year and it would have felt a long time ago.
Exactly. And to that end, we're actually going to start talking about COVID and our response to that. A lot of our time for 2020 has been taken up, like many of you, in figuring out how do we live in this new reality? How do we support one another and how do we help each other through this time? Some of the things that we did early on, I've said to many of you that I feel like we've been every couple of weeks there's a shift in this pandemic, and so it's required us to find a new way of addressing the needs. So we started off with some listening sessions, and well, we actually started off with some basic technology as we were all trying to figure out how to build the plane as we were flying it, like Reverend Jeff Spencer has said before. And then we moved into listening sessions on various topics and had a lot of turnout from lay leaders and ministers that joined us to explore. The wisdom was in the room, and we brought in some speakers as well to help us navigate some of these tough issues. We also heard your request and we began to record sermons that you could use in your worship services or however worked for you. And so we've each done several of those, and we just completed our first all conference worship, and that's available to all of you. And we'll be looking in the near future at offering more sermons. And one of the basic things that we've all done is to be available to you, to our churches, as things have come up. There's been a host of different ways that life has manifested itself in this time of pandemic. So there's been a lot of phone calls and emails to offer support in the ways that we can. We've tried to do some check-ins along the way of reaching out to ministers or inviting our council members who serve as council ambassadors to reach out to our churches and to see what it is that we can do to continue to support you. Did I leave anything out?
One of the things that I think ties into that you just brought up at the start of kind of some of the adaptive change piece of it as we're all learning to fly this plane that we're building, is really also one of the core things that we do in supporting churches all the time, because we do this from a posture of coaching. That is something that we've introduced within the life of our conference over the past few years, and we do it in a number of different ways. We approach really with an appreciative model, to be able to appreciate what is going well, but also to appreciate that a lot of the ways for us to engage in these really complex questions of what are the best ways to engage with technology in this moment of COVID? What are the best ways for us to gather responsibly, whether it's in a virtual setting or an in-person setting or a hybrid setting, and how we make those decisions? The approach to that in sort of a coaching and empowerment model is really what we've been doing for some time. And I think that it's been really cool over the course of this time to see how we've been able to actually, all three of us, as well as our volunteer leaders throughout the conference, to be able to engage in that even further. Um, in kind of some of those informal ways that you were talking about towards the end, Diane, of being available for churches just with those questions that are coming up that we couldn't have necessarily predicted, either because this year is so unpredictable or simply because there's things that happen that are unpredictable in every year. The way that we kind of engage in that in a question model, in a curiosity model, leaning into the wisdom in the room, being able to empower one another rather than just solving the problem and moving on like it's some task list, is really been, I think, at the heart of what we've been trying to do and talking about in these state of the conference addresses for a while. And I think really it's done us really well when I'm working with churches and leaders throughout the conference. I think that that really has started to take hold in our culture together, and we really are starting to be able to rely mutually on one another. And I think that we were sort of primed for just this moment, which has been really exciting for me as I've been traveling around the conference virtually, not physically, in these spaces. And certainly one of the ways that we'll do that in formal ways. We will work intentionally through revisioning programs or engaging with local churches on specific questions about their mission and their vision and values. And certainly a lot of that sort of took the back seat in this year as we needed to pivot early in the year from what processes maybe had been in place. However, there's now a number of churches that are starting to ask those questions again, and I think we're leaning into that. Certainly, in the past few weeks, I've been exchanging some emails with some of our pastors and church leaders about, we really want to pick up where we were. We've learned a lot. This moment in time has really been so instructional for our churches. It's been inspiring to watch. It's been an absolute privilege to journey alongside all of our dedicated leaders in our churches in this moment in time, and being able to provide that consultative support. And I think now starting to once again re-engage in maybe a little bit more structured programming. And so that learning has really served us well. I think it served our church as well. The questions that are coming up are such good questions, and I am constantly reminded in all of it of just the wonderful ways that we engage in this relationally. I think that the coaching model is such a relational model of support and encouragement that just makes it really an absolute joy and treat to get to work with. And I know that, of course, Davena is traveling around in all of these spaces, especially working with Search and Call, Davena. I know a lot of those questions are coming up
Yeah.
because transition is happening still, even in the
In the
midst of
midst
all of
of it
it.
all. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, and how I miss cruising down the highway. Pre-COVID, we were in our cars and driving near and far and all over the place. And we used to talk about, oh, I had to drive 5 hours here and 6 hours there, and what I would love to get out and drive again and see all the different seasons as the seasons begin to change.
Mhm.
And we were
Yeah.
preaching at different churches almost every Sunday. One of us was there at a church preaching and sharing the word and sitting at the table to listen to how the church was doing and having fellowship with one another. And we miss all of you so very much and hope that time will allow us to gather physically. But in the meantime, we continue to still do ordinations. We have ordained several folks via Zoom as we did in person, and we've had installations. Um, Beautiful services, short, brief, and beautiful. And we realized that maybe we don't need a 3 hour ordination service or installation service sometimes. So as people, we are learning how to make things beautiful, concise and direct. And it has been impactful and still very meaningful when one of the ordinations, when it was time to lay on hands, everyone was able to put their hand toward the screen, and then there was someone there to physically touch someone so that they could still feel the presence of the united community all around them. And they had their intimate families were able to come in. And so it was ordinations and installation service have been just as beautiful as they were when we were able to attend them in person. And search and call. Whew, some people thought we wouldn't get through it, and we have gotten through. We have churches have pastors in place, and some are virtually in place where they continue to do their preaching and building out worship services where they are currently located. And some have relocated and came to California, and and in their place or in their church office, they're still able to do these things. So it can be done. Is it hard work? Yes.
I think Davina might have frozen for a minute. Um, as she's coming back in, as she's coming back in, I'm thinking about some of my colleagues who said search and call should not happen, should wait until we are all back together again. So it's neat to hear you say that, Davina. Yeah.
Yes, it's neat. It's very positive, and I just want all of you who are embarking upon what will we do next. Just don't get discouraged. Be encouraged because you can get through it. You can run this race, and you'll see yourself at the finish line going, "We have a pastor." Yes, praise the Lord. And we also continue to support through, as Daniel mentioned earlier, through coaching, um, through Day of Discovery. We've had some virtual days of discovery. Um, uh, we our annual meetings. We have been able to attend more of your church meetings that we probably could have ever attended in person. So
Right.
thank you
Right.
for saying yes. Let's go ahead and try this thing. And I don't know, Diane and Daniel will share with you. Sometimes we get to visit 2 or 3 churches on a Sunday
Yeah.
That's and
versus.
that's and that's been one of the things that I really have enjoyed about this. And I know for our churches, we talk about the ways that the virtual space is bringing us together. One of the
Mhm,
practices I've built in most of my weeks, I try to actually virtually travel the conference, at least a church in each of our 6 associations, especially if you have your service on a YouTube link or a Facebook, some way that I can see it after the fact, sort of on demand.
mhm,
It really just enlivens my work and makes me feel like here in my home office, I'm still engaged in our community,
mhm.
and that's been so much fun. We couldn't have done that before.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
could not have. And
No,
so I'm grateful for the ways you all have created worship services. Um, and Diane and Daniel and I have had many wonderful and beautiful conversations with pastors and lay leaders, encouraging ones, some difficult ones, but we have been able to show up, and Diane will share more about how we do that.
Yeah, we continue to take seriously the importance of nurturing our authorized ministers, being supportive and being present and understanding what it is that you all need in this time. I've said this many times, seminary did not prepare me for a pandemic, and I think all of us can say the same.
Yes.
And so we're all trying to figure this out together. And COVID has given us an opportunity. I have seen on Zoom some of our ministers that I had never had a chance to meet before. We were never, despite all the traveling around and going places, there were still ministers I had not met, and many of them have shown up for our coffee hours with conference ministers that we were doing, and some of them have shown up for our chaplain support sessions or our church pastor support sessions. So we've tried to check in and find out, what it is that you all need most. There came a point a few months ago where we realized everybody was zoomed out, and the idea of a conference minister coffee hour just felt like way too much with all the other meetings our pastors were
Hmm.
doing. So we kind of switched to an as needed. And sometimes I get text messages, emails, phone calls. I know you both do as well. And asking
Mhm.
questions or saying, hey, can I just talk? Continuing the coaching that we've been doing, and the work that we've been doing around that. We've just been trying to be there in many ways that we could. I know that actually I had planned to talk about this a little later, but this feels like a right time as we're talking about supporting both our churches and our clergy. We've partnered with the Lombard Mennonite Peace Center, and we offered the Healthy
Mhm.
Congregations workshop where we had, I think it was something like 60 people that signed up for that.
Yeah.
And we're getting ready to start a clergy clinic where we have 11 of our authorized ministers who are going to be part of joining another cohort to be part of a clergy clinic that will meet 3 times, 3 different times over the next 7 or 8 months. So there's just some
Mhm.
opportunities, and we're trying to get creative when we hear what the needs are. So we really
Mhm.
encourage people to let us know what you need.
And I think that, with that, the Lombard Mennonite Peace Center partnership that we've cultivated has been so wonderful. I know that in this moment, as much as we may not always like to talk about it, because we're good people who love our church and love people, in this moment we all know that there have been many moments of tension and conflict. There have been many moments in which, Diane, as you like to say, the things in the walls started coming out because the virtual walls maybe still hold the same amount as the physical walls, but they hold it a little differently. And
Mhm.
the one of the things that the three of us have gone through has been that mediation training to be able to encourage us and equip us in our work. And also, we've ensured that other leaders throughout the conference have been able to participate in that as well, so that we're not the only three skilled mediators to be able to work in that way. We have connections ecumenically now as well, to be able to encourage one another in some of our partner judicatories here in Northern California and Nevada, to be able to leverage the skills and experience, because as this moment continues, we certainly recognize that a lot of those questions and relationships and conflicts that have maybe been long simmering, or maybe are just coming to a flashpoint because we're all at our wits' end sometimes, really are going to need some special tender attention. And so LMPC has been such a wonderful partner. I've been so grateful for the ways in which that training has strengthened me, but also to strengthen our churches. I had a chance to participate in that with Davena, and I know that both of us loved that opportunity to really be able to build that tool set.
Yes,
Yeah, that
it
was
was
just a few
definitely a
months ago,
blessing.
wasn't it?
Oh.
Yeah, we actually, out of that training, there were a number of us in other churches that also took the mediation training, and some from, yeah, like you said, our ecumenical partners. And we actually had a little cohort of those that have been trained to do mediation that have gotten together to say, how can we be ready to respond to the needs? So that's
Mhm.
great.
Yep.
Um, as we're in this world and in this place, and I begin to think of communications even as I'm looking at the office copier that is now in my house.
That's a
Um,
fabulous spot for a copier. Everyone should have one in their home
everyone,
office. I think so.
everyone.
Yeah, blends right
So
in.
yeah, so how do we continue to communicate with one another in this time, Daniel?
We have lots of ways of communicating. We're learning so many new ways too. And for everyone who is not in on our joke, in the time since we last met in person at Sonoma State, we actually had begun the process and completed the process of moving the conference house. So we had previously been in a house for the name of the office in San Leandro. That lease ended, and so we relocated to a shared office space that, in some ways, proved to be very forward thinking for what would come in this year. And so we actually no longer have so much a dedicated office space in the sense that it's just for us. Instead, we have individual offices in a larger shared space in Concord. And so it's a little bit more of a sort of corporate drop-in type setting. There's possibilities for us to, when we are meeting in person, to go to different centers. It's a global network of different office centers, so we can actually meet with folks if it makes more sense to meet in a drop-in office space in places like San Jose or in the city and have accessibility to meeting rooms. We also could meet in Sacramento or in Reno and in different places where these networks are connected in. It helped us to be able to streamline some of our operations. Diane is now the caretaker of our copier because when we had leased it, it was on a longer term lease, but our new office space has copiers. So as soon as that lease is done, we will be able to realize that sort of savings. We were able to realize savings in that we don't need to have our own office internet connection anymore. We don't need to have our own necessarily separate office phone system. We were able to move and port our numbers to digital apps that cost us significantly less, and then use the savings from an office phone system to be able to provide stipends for our staff to be able to use their cell phones. And so we've been able to reallocate different resources in different ways to be able to do our work. And of course, it makes it in some ways a lot easier. We were prepped for sort of this new working from home deployed model. In the future, we signed a 2-year lease for 3 separate offices in the shared office space, and we may be reevaluating that towards the end of 2021 in order to see sort of where we're at. But as of right now, we were really well poised to make this change. Little did we know. We also have been able to, though, at the same time in the rest of our communications, this was a great year to evaluate that. One of the things that we've been able to do is we've been able to completely move online through an online workflow, a number of our different processes. It's exciting. Our committees no longer have to necessarily wait for staff to pull things together manually. They're able to actually log in. They have their own logins to be able to see what's been submitted, what's been uploaded. We're so grateful that many of our leaders are understanding this need and using those web workflows rather than sort of just calling us and asking us to do it. We're always happy to help you work through the web workflow and be able to equip one another so that we're able to work as efficiently. One of the things that's so exciting about this is that we'll talk a little bit more about our staff later on, but we've been able to actually reallocate close to 200 hours, we estimate, of staff work time a year to be able to reinvest directly in our mission of supporting and uniting and nurturing and away from some of the other more time-intensive tasks that we had. So communications has really helped us. We're going to be rolling out more of that early in 2021 with the goal that another website revision. We try to update the design every 2 years to stay fresh. It is time for that in 2021. So we'll be asking some folks for some input on that in the coming weeks and months as we work towards that for the summer of 2021. But it's really exciting to do that. And one of the other things, this is just totally a nerdy thing. But I know that it's been transformative for the 3 of us. And we get comments about this. People think this is really cool. And so I just want to highlight that yes, you actually can make an appointment directly on our calendars to meet with us without sending 70 emails back and forth. What time can we meet? It is something that we've been able to sign up with where you can click a link. We always have it in our email signature. We have it on our staff bio pages on the website. If you email us, we actually have our autoresponders set up so that you get that link right away. And you can actually really pick a time where we will meet in Zoom or on the phone and be able to dedicate that time to your question without that back and forth of the email scheduling, which I know no one loves, but especially in this moment in time can feel so exhausting. And so, I know that people email me and say, this is a really cool thing. And we talk about on our staff meetings that people are really appreciating that. And so it's really been kind of a neat little thing.
Daniel, I had a colleague once who told me that he really felt that that sometimes emails get too long, that was never the purpose of emails, and especially in this time, I've realized how true that statement is. And he had a rule of thumb that if you have to say something, if it takes more than 5 sentences to say something, you should pick up the phone and call rather than email. So I know that that's something that sometimes I get going before I realize it's going to be a lot more than 5 sentences. But
Right by the time that it's past 5, I'm so well down the track.
yeah. So I'm trying to get better about saying, you know what, I realize this isn't going to be helpful to us to do this in an email. Here's my Calendly link. Let's find a time to talk.
Right.
And so I'm trying to get better about that. And you may be seeing that more as well.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
been yeah, and I know that Davena too, you've there's a sort of excitement that we've shared when people will save that link and actually make an appointment with us later on, sort of preemptively, which has been really fun.
It has been. I'd be like, yes, I got a calendar and yes.
you know all of this is empowered. Communications is so important, and it's something that we're really trying to make both worthwhile for you all that are out in the conference, for all of us that make up the conference, as well as for us to be able to do the work that you've called us to do. And none of this can be made possible without so much wonderful support that we receive through the financial expressions of covenant of churches and individuals. We have certainly such gratitude for the churches that contribute to our church's wider mission, basic support. We also have an amazing and growing number of people that are giving as individual friends of the conference. There's going to be at annual gathering some slides recognizing people who have contributed in the past year and want to be named for that. We are so grateful that that has been able to really allow us to do new and greater things. And so I hope that both our churches that give to OCWM, but also our individual friends of the conference know just how appreciative we are for their gifts, because without them, really, we couldn't do any of this work that we're doing. We also have in the past year done some more work at education and training through our Stewards of Abundance program, and working with local churches, both with individual conversations and webinars and training opportunities to consult and talk about campaigns, but also with churches like First Congregational Church of Alameda, where it has been such a treat to be able to once again work through the Stewards of Abundance program. We took a pause, of course, because of COVID, but we're picking up again in January for this 9-month program as an opportunity to strengthen leaders. We've also, as part of that broader uptake, introduced this year the Stewarding Abundance e-newsletter, which is a once a month newsletter, although I recognize in October all of the attention has turned to annual gatherings. So it is a normally once a month, but not in the month of annual gathering newsletter. And it has been a way for us to highlight our donors, to highlight those who contribute to us, but also a way to resource our leaders. Of course, in this time of COVID, there is such a bold opportunity for us to stand against the narrative of scarcity and instead lean into the new opportunities and the constant assurance of abundance that we are assured of in our faith tradition, but also that is really borne out with all of the creativity and all of the support. One of the things, Diane, I know that we have been really encouraged encouraged by, and I have seen as such a wonderful reminder of that abundance and that assurance, is that through all of this moment in COVID, we have really been able to continue to rely on our churches for their gifts to our churches, our OCWM, for our individuals for their gifts to Friends of the Conference, that we've been able to see actually a lot of leaning into even some more support in the past few weeks, as churches really are so grateful and appreciative for the connection with us. And that is so encouraging to me, to be able to have that immediate expression from them, of churches continuing to lean into that abundance.
Yeah, that's something that I've just been really grateful for. We had our discernment session on the budget on August 29th, and it was clear that, and this is something that has been operating for a long time, in that there has not been a balanced budget, and there was definitely a call for that. And we wanted the feedback from the churches as to what was important. And we have reached out to churches to ask churches to do something we haven't asked before, which was to make your pledge for giving to basic support for our church's wider mission. We always talk about 5 for 5, and there's 4 special offerings, but the basic support, our church's wider mission, is the offering that provides money for mission to happen in the world, for national setting programs, for the work that we all are doing to support our churches and our ministers and to unite for justice. And then also it supports the work of the associations, because a percentage of the money to our church's wider mission basic support goes to our associations. So we put out the call, and many times our churches are saying, well, we didn't know, nobody asked us, we didn't know that we were supposed to be doing this. So this is a way, just like individuals will pledge to their local church, this was a way for us to know what the church intends to do for 2021, so that we can send reminders. um, but we are just so we were I was moved to tears by a couple of the stories of our churches, where they sat down and talked about what their wider church giving means to them as a congregation. And then they relayed to me that story. And I'm tearing up now as I'm
Mm.
talking about it. But it was so beautiful to hear that, that covenantal connection that our churches are feeling as we continue to support one another in the work that God has called us to do. And it's just been a beautiful moment for the last couple months as we've been reaching out to churches, and we still haven't heard back from all of our churches, and we're hoping to do that. Our conference council members have started to reach out to some we haven't heard back from. So if you haven't gotten a call, you may be getting one soon. But we want to know, we want to know how to support you, and we want to know what are the needs that affect you the most as a church, that allows us to continue the mission and covenant together. And your gifts to our church's wider mission basic support allows that to happen.
The thing about that has been so exciting for me as well in some of the phone calls and the letters have been also, especially the churches that either haven't given to OCWM before, or haven't given for some time. There's some of the churches that just the phone call and the conversation was enough for them to say, oh my gosh, this is something that is so important to us. This relationship that we share together as the Northern California Nevada Conference and in our 6 associations is so alive for us. We want to be part of it. And likewise, at the same time, I have been blown away by the number of our friends of the conference who either have chosen to increase their giving that they give a month, or those who have not been giving monthly, who have decided to give each month. And it's such a wonderful thing that I receive an alert in my email for our individual friends of the conference every month as those come through. And it's an opportunity for me to just immediately see their name and be grateful and say a prayer for them, and a chance to get to know one another actually even a little bit deeper, and to make the relationship. Certainly we are a group of 113 churches, and that's in some ways the way that we've operated. We see ourselves as one conference in 113 churches. But Diane, you always remind us that we're 13,000 members, and the Friends of the Conference really has been a way for us to start to engage, I think, at a more individual level, at least for me, and be reminded that the covenant that we share on that individual level is also important, and is really what undergirds us. And so that has been, for me, an entirely different opportunity to be able to support one another on that individual level, and share stories, and hear how
Yeah.
God's Holy Spirit is surprising us and encouraging us in all of these different communities in our geography that Davina and I and you get to drive through and see when we're in the physical space. It's been such a rich connection for me to be able to do that as we talk to individual donors as well. So I am so grateful for that. I think it's a rich and powerful way for us to be connected as well.
Yeah, and if yeah, I am very grateful for our individual donors,
Very
and
grateful.
yeah, it's amazing the support that we've been
Mhm,
receiving. And one thing that I also want to add is a note about per capita giving, because I don't think a lot of our churches know or remember that a few years ago, Annual Gathering actually voted that into part of the budget, which would be churches would give a per capita gift of $5 per member per year. And we've received very few of those. So part of the pledge process that we're doing for churches, this is separate from Friends of the Conference, which is for
yep.
individual giving. This is part of the pledge process will also be to remind people about the per capita giving, which supports the work that we do with youth ministry, with our camp program. And as many of you know, this has been a hard year for our camp program. Both our camps shut down this year. And because of COVID, that was no longer feasible to maintain having a camp manager at Camp Casadero. So we've taken that on ourselves, and we're trying to figure out some pretty serious issues that are going on with that. And so there's been a lot of consulting, a lot of staff time, a lot of work, and the line item in the budget actually supports the work that we're putting into to making that happen, because we want to protect these camps. They're such a valuable asset, and they mean so much to our youth. I tell people that my call to ministry happened at youth camp for me. And so the youth camp experience is something that means a lot to me and always has. And there are so many good and faithful and wonderful people that are
Mhm,
trying to help us figure this out. And I am so grateful for the individuals who have given of their time, who have given of their gifts, to make things happen, and to try to help us figure out how to get through COVID, and how to begin to look forward to what our youth programming and camp program looks like in the
Yeah.
future. So
And
I
as
would be
we
remiss not to mention that.
Yeah,
yeah.
Go
and
ahead.
we've had new people join the leadership team from different
Yeah,
churches that
yeah,
Mhm,
normally haven't been a part of the camping program or the youth ministry overall, to show up and to give voice and share their gifts and talents. And we're so grateful for that as well. That is reaching further out into our local congregations, where people are saying this matters to all of us. It's not just
mhm.
a group of people, but it matters to the wider church. And so we're here, and we want to be present, and we want to share our gifts to make a difference, to see what we can do and how we can come together.
yeah.
And I think, for me, the image of stewardship, which of course is not just the church word for fundraising, but we really understand it to be that faithful caretaking of all of our resources. So much of that for me is a natural world image. For me is being able to see it most fully in the tending of a natural space, and certainly the stewardship of our camps. I think is such a powerful image, because it does, Diane, like you say, the call to ministry for you came through youth camp. For me myself, I grew up attending camp ministries as well, and multiple ones, because I was a church nerd. Still am, but was illustrated in that way then. And for me, I always can close my eyes and think of that communion with God on a personal level. I'm usually back in the woods and lakes of Minnesota, in one of those places. And certainly I know that there's been a lot of attention just because of the type of work that we're undertaking with Camp Cazadero. But of course, the beautiful miracle story of Camp Tamarack this year, I can't let us move on until we talk about that, because it is such a
Yes.
inspirational way. We'll make sure that some of those pictures are available on our guidebook app and the annual gathering website. But if you hadn't seen them yet, both of our camps actually were threatened by wildfire at 2 different times this year. But for Camp Tamarack, the fire came to camp. And the firefighters, the wildland firefighters, actually took time in their preparation work to wrap our structures in the fire prevention space blankety things. And when we were able to go back and see the space, not only having been preserved and spared, but knowing that it was done so by the caretaking of people that we don't know, are not connected to us in any way. We're just people who cared for that space, is such a powerful reminder of the ways in which this ministry is so much bigger than us, and so much stronger than we can imagine, and an image that I will not forget for the rest of my life.
Yeah, when I picture those cabins, those pictures and those cabins wrapped, and the pictures were taken on a clear day when there was no fire danger. Our camp manager Wade Hobson went up there, and then I think about them standing there with the fire, because Wade left the camp when he saw the smoke over the ridge, and it was sometime after that that they came in and wrapped it. So the fire had to be, the smoke and everything had to be all around, and they took the time to wrap all those buildings, which saved it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, Daniel, did you want to say before we move on
God
to our
sends a great
committees on
camp.
ministry?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Before we move on to our committees on ministry, did you want to say one more word under stewardship about our our church and clergy endowment fund capital campaign?
Sure. Last year we talked about this. We had started the capital campaign for our church and clergy vitality endowment in partnership with the pension boards. Those of you who were at annual gathering last year will remember that we were really excited about the possibilities to be able to strengthen the church and clergy vitality fund, to be able to dream bigger and imagine more wonderful things, particularly around ways that we can support new ministries and new ministry development through new and expanding church sites, through resourcing leaders for changes within their congregation to be able to adapt and move. And with the pension boards, through partnership of really outstanding programs that we see the benefit of, not just in our conference, but denomination-wide, programs like the Next Generation Leadership Initiative, the Ministers Financial Vitality Initiative, and Credo. As well as perhaps most importantly in this moment in time, support for the Christmas Fund and Board for Ministerial Assistance emergency funds. We had to, of course, sort of by necessity, put that on pause. We were really looking forward to moving through our leadership phase and begin last fall, the individual giving phase. And then, of course, that ran smack dab into the winter's COVID development and our need for us to move our attention elsewhere. And so that work for us here is currently on pause. We will have conversations with council about the best time to engage in that again. We're so grateful for the gifts that have already been given to that. We have been able to utilize those gifts to be able to put already in the endowment. So while we're not already realizing the full expanse of that, we are realizing the growing strength of that, which in this particular moment in time actually allowed us to convert a portion of that fund, which is always restricted, in partnership with Cornerstone Fund to be able to make some interest-only loans available to churches during the pandemic that would need those funds. Those loans are still available for application, I believe, although I know that the duration for while we're locking those funds to collateralize it is coming up, and I know will need to be renegotiated. I know some individuals also in individual churches were able to partner with that through Cornerstone so that we could make those pools of funds available. So even though it's not entirely what we were planning with the capital campaign in any way, shape, or form, it really has allowed us to be adaptable. And I think that we have been able to respond to the requests of our churches and continue to be able to respond to them and continue to move forward as things unfold. So I'm grateful for our capital campaign donors, for our council and major donors who have already stepped up. And I am excited for the ways in which we will re-begin that work in the coming months to come.
Yeah, so some of the donors, the individual donors to the capital campaign, also allowed us to convert their gifts to the Cornerstone loan for the collateral to do the loan program. So again, if your church is looking for some interest-only / low-interest loans to help through this time, those are still available. And we are grateful for the ways that, our stewardship of resources can, gifts to the capital campaign that now are being able to be used for this, and then will be returned to the capital campaign, and also looking to, like you said, pick that work up again in the not so distant, hopefully the near future.
Yes.
Committees on ministry work, that is continuing to happen. And one of the things that COVID has introduced to us is an ability to, committees on ministry have moved online. So ComA, Section A and Section B are both meeting monthly online. And Section B continues to meet with ministers. And, I know there's times where people are saying, this is really hard to not be in the same room with one another and to talk to one another. We've been figuring out how to do this on Zoom. And the upside of it is we've gotten new members who live too far away to come down to Pleasant Hill once a month for our meeting. And and then people that are meeting with ComB um, with joy because they are looking for the support in this COVID time, and also they are grateful that they're not having to travel many hours to come to a meeting. So this has provided us with some really new ways to do this work that we're learning some good things from this, and I think we'll adapt some of this as we begin to move into to the world beyond pandemic. ComA, again, Section A is meeting online and continues to meet with our candidates for member and discernment, lay ministerial standing candidates. Lay ministerial standing is a new authorization that has began with the new manual of ministry, and we have actually granted lay ministerial standing to 3 people just in the last few months. So it's meeting some needs in our churches. And we're and Section A is finding some really great ways to work with those individuals, make sure that they have the support they need, and to be working with them as members in discernment that are seeking ordination as well. So it's been there's been some new life kind of breathed into our churches and being able to call a member to receive standing to be able to serve them. And that's been really exciting for us. We have continued to, Section E is our committee that works with complaints and fitness reviews. And we have met online a few times to continue to build community and trust so that if the work is ever needed for ComE, we're ready to do that work. And that's been, it's a really good group of people. And we seek, whenever there is, we hope that there's never an issue that comes up, but when there's an issue that comes up, I am continually amazed by the faith and the compassion and the love of the members of that committee as we work to bring healing to churches and to ministers and to move forward in our processes. Um, Committee sections C and D. We're still hopeful that both of those sections will get off the ground. We're working on that. We have section C, which is working with new church starts, and section D, which is looking at resources and how to support churches. So a lot of the things that the three of us are doing with mediation and coaching and consulting, and we want to create that menu of options that section D would help us. These are the things that are available if your church needs support in any of these areas. We're here and we're all working with section D so that there's kind of um, a group behind every church that is there ready to support and help. Um, yeah, Davena, as we begin to look into our third section on Unite for Justice, I want to invite you because you've been really busy with the disaster ministries response. And I know we talked a little bit about the fires at TAM and CAS, but what's been going on there?
Oh wow, it's been a busy, well not busy, but a terrible fire season. And right before the fire season, issues and needs and requests for funds and gift cards for people who were underprivileged, who had food sustainability as an issue and, couldn't get to work because, some of them were laid off or they had to, downsize. And so we were the disaster team and I'm so grateful for those who have said yes to help. Because for a while I was just trying to run that team alone, and so I'm grateful for those who have stepped up and who share in that ministry. Thank all of you so much for putting up with me. But we have had, we were blessed as a conference, and all the resources that you all share. It allows the ministry to not just happen within the church doors, but it allows us to serve and to be the hands and feet of Christ in our communities and meet the needs of those who are really struggling during this time. During the fire season, we were able to offer as gift cards and for food, for gas, for clothing, people who had to be evacuated from their homes, and then they would return where their food had gone bad because their power had to be turned off. So some had just made grocery and didn't have any food, and so the fire disaster relief fund that all of you have poured into allowed those folks to be able to um, get some of their food back in the meantime, right? Those who needed a place to stay, for shelter, we were able to offer that kind of support as well. And we know that this is just the beginning. As people start to return to their properties and see what's damaged, or if their home is still there, we are able to use the resources. Um, there's church, our churches up north, and then our churches in the Fresno area and the Santa Cruz. I mean, it was the fires were hitting every part of our conference at rapid rate. The fires, we were even in our area here in Fairfield, we had some people who had to evacuate, and we had to check in, and those cleanup buckets that you all put together and you all assembled a few couple was that I think that was 2 years ago. We were able to use all of them. There aren't any more disaster cleanup buckets, which means somehow we'll have to figure out how to replace them. But they came in handy. We had Ken Moore um, from Auburn Church drive some to the Vacaville area, and then a whole nother batch out into the Sonoma area. So those buckets came in handy. So thank you for your donations. Thank you for your time to assemble them. We thank the churches that have stored them up for us for a time such as this. And so that's been like the thing that we have to now redo. It's like we have to get these disaster buckets together. It's now time also to put together those little handy bags that we put together for disaster with socks and face towel and toothbrush and things, because the people who had trailers or small places to live, some of those people are homeless, and so they have needs. And we can't do as much as we would like to because of all the COVID restrictions. But I know that with 13,000 people, we can make a difference.
Yeah, and one of our associations, Davina, has already started working with you to create some of those
Yes.
cleanup buckets. Yeah.
Yeah, yes. We have a grant that came from Golden Gate Association, and to support the use and to make up those cleanup buckets is just of trying to figure out, because with all the social distancing, we need to probably have to find a parking lot and space things out all over, and and trying to figure all that. And it will take some time, but I know we can do it. And so, but we, your resources are much appreciated. And I know that those people are, church members at North Fork Grace Community Church who had lost their food.
I, I think
One
we're
of
losing Davina's connections again in this time, but I also want to throw in a plug as we have this quick moment, because I know that we're also gathering our annual gathering offering is in part going to support a lot of this ministry. Davina, isn't that right?
Yes, yes, it is. Yes, it is. And so, we're, again, we just ask that we pray for all that, we give thanks to God for all that you have done, and we continue to pray for all that you will do to be the hands and feet of Christ in the world, and to make a difference for those who are in need. So thank you, team,
Thank you.
disaster team, and thank you, Northern California Nevada Conference.
Thank you.
Lisa
One
again.
of the just a little plug. One of the joys of sheltering in place and schooling in place is that sometimes our Wi-Fi connections um, get stretched by classrooms happening in the next room. So, Davina, feel as we begin to move in to talk about the work we've been doing with Rachel Justice, feel free if you need to turn off your camera, or we'll
Okay.
step in and we'll continue when the Wi-Fi connection doesn't work for you.
Thank you. Yes, it's I have a seventh grader, and it is definitely class time, so we are battling. And anyway, um, so as we move into Unite for Justice, and what a time that we're living in, where justice is being stretched in every kind of way. And we are called to come to the table to have difficult conversations, that stretch us, that sometimes anger us, that push us, that causes us to pause and think. And so we have been called and trying to live into one of these four resolutions. One was to become an anti-racism conference, and there was some pushback, which we will appreciate it. They said, we don't want to just claim it. We want to know that we will live into it. We want to know that we will live and do the action and do the work. And so that um, gave us an opportunity to use the gifts and talents and the training that Reverend Davida McAllister had led us in the racial justice training. And Diane and I had become facilitators. And our training allowed us to reach out and and train two others, Reverend Celeste Fields and Dr. Sharon Finema. And so the four of us collectively have now um, we were able to lead two full trainings. And those trainings will, allowed us to talk about the constructed me and the marginalized you and the collective us, if you will. And so it's us coming together, moving from the center of of the constructed power and privilege, and reaching out, and then reaching out to those margins, and then coming back in together again. And so the conversations were rich, the training was rich, the fodder was challenging, and yet you all continue to show up, and you showed up to have these different conversations, not one time but two. And we have another training coming up really soon. We also started with Reverend Dr. Shira Ward. She introduced us to some small conversations where we would talk about different, watch a movie or talk about a book, and then have these conversations about that information that we shared. And the again, difficult conversations, um, and people continue, you all continue to show up, so much so that when we thought we were going to end, we had an end time, we're only going to go this many weeks, and you all were like, no, we want to continue on. And so that group continued on, and from that group another group branched off and started having these conversations, and from that group another group
Davina, I'm gonna
and I'm
jump in here
breaking
for
up.
a minute.
I know.
Yeah, no, I'm
Conversation.
gonna jump in while your internet's coming back on. I want to jump in to say that when we did that first small group conversation on race, we were trying to do it in person. We were creating, our Zoom rooms. We had them all ready to go. We were going to do that in different locations, and we could not get people who felt like that they could drive to that location after a long day of work and to get there and do that. So we talked to Cheryl, and she said, okay, let's try to do it online. Well, that turned out to be very prophetic because we started in February, and by March, um, it was perfect that we were online, that we were able to finish that. And like you said, the groups, they don't want to stop meeting. And so one group will keep meeting on their own, and we'll start with another group. So that's been really exciting.
Yes, and Diane, along with Melissa and Lisa, will begin another group in January. Is that right, Diane? Is it January?
Correct.
Yes.
Yes.
And so look out for that, and join us, and how to have conversations that make that aren't always easy, but they're prophetic. They're difficult, and yet they bind us and bound. They bring us together to hear one another's story, because there's a big chunk of that, um, those conversations where we talk about our own stories, and that builds the bond, and that builds the relationships, and that allows us to freely enter into the space. And so then if you don't make that first meeting, that you can't come into the second meeting, because the bond is already created. But just know that we will always continue the conversations. And pray their names. Black Lives Matters. Pray their names. I have not been privileged to physically walk the prayer their names. Pray their names. Um, but it's a powerful heart with those who have been violently killed by the police. Um, in their untimely murders, to walk and say their name, to read about them, to learn about them. Um, and in one of the settings where they are, how big are those things, Diane? How tall? Um,
Are they 5 feet tall, or I mean, they're
they're
huge hearts
they're huge
that
hearts.
they're wooden hearts that Reverend Katie Morrison and Reverend Curran Reichert and the folks at Sonoma and at Santa Rosa, they created this display to travel around the conference.
Yes. And there's a big heart that says Black Lives Matter. And of course, as you try to do justice work, there's one person or persons that will try to destroy it, and someone took spray paint and put all lives matters. And I believe, Diane, correct me if I'm wrong, but there was a police department that corrected that and made and replaced that, correct? That one that was vandalized.
I don't I didn't hear I and that could be something that I didn't know. I heard
Mhm,
that they were creating a new heart, and that they
mhm.
were and then the it happened in Fremont, and then there was a newsletter that dedicated an entire issue
Okay.
to both the display and to the way that the witness that even the
Mhm.
vandalism offered for such a time as this.
Yes. So we invite you, if when you can. I know the seasons are changing and it's still hot out here in Fairfield. It's almost 100 degrees. I don't know what kind of October this is, but before the rain come, that's what I'm trying to say. Before the rain come, I invite you to go
Yeah.
and walk amongst those who have lost their lives. Um, and Diane will lead us in the conversation about the abolition calendar.
Yeah, so along with after George Floyd's murder, and there were a group of us that got together and said, "What can we do?" And the Pray Their Names installation came out of that, as well as a do-it-yourself kit that we realized that many of our churches might be too small to or not, or their land may be too small to be able to host the installation. And so we created these small kits that if you want a project for your church, that you can create these and maybe put them in your front yard or put them in a smaller space that is your church. And then from along with that conversation was an understanding that we need to look at abolition. Slavery did not end. It has just continued to evolve. And the work that we need to do is to end slavery in all of its forms. And so we are working on an initiative that we're trying to get a little bit more traction to get off the ground. But the idea is that we will look at different aspects of abolition. So the first one we're looking at is community safety and care, policing community safety and care. And so we have these different themes, and the hope is that we will provide resources and an educational session, as well as a justice action that those who are interested can engage in, and maybe we can bring some churches together to unite for justice around this work. So our first one, policing community safety and care. We're offering anyone in the conference who has a moment to share their testimony about their experience of policing. And as Reverend Tony Dunbar has said, we want all experiences. We want everyone's experiences. So far, 3 of us have put our testimonies up on the website. It's at letstalk.ncncucc.org. And we have also, and the question is, what's been your experience of policing? And then what is your fear about policing? And what is your greatest hope about policing? And so we want to begin the conversation about what does it look for us, like for us to focus on community safety and care, especially in light of the importance of abolition. And so those are, as we take on new themes, and originally we thought we would do one a month, and we're realizing that it takes more time for people to wrap their heads around it and to get the work going. So we're doing a little bit of work to regroup and figure out how we do that. But we are working on those resources and that aspect of it right now. Would love to have anyone else who has some time to share their passion for justice, their gifts, their experiences, their work, so that we can find out really how to do together what one of us or one church might not be able to do alone.
And there's so
Reverend Dr. Tony Dunbar has, go ahead.
no, I was just saying
Reverend
there's
Dr.
so much work to
It's
sorry.
2020 all in a capsule right here.
There's so much work to be
That's
done.
right.
There's so much work to be done, and there's only a few of us that are serving on the Justice and Witness Committee. And so please join us as we continue to move forward. We continue to move in times that are uncharted. There are times that are stressed. There are times with a lot of tension. And the more work and the more that we need to do, we can't do alone. We're more powerful together than we ever are apart. So please consider joining Reverend Casey, Lacey Hunter, and myself and others on this journey towards justice and witness and all that encompass.
Yeah, and I want to say a word about the 4 resolutions that are coming before annual gathering. And I've written a little bit about our theme and the how we got to bring these 4 resolutions. And you can look in your guidebook for the piece that I wrote about that. But we over a year ago, we talked about a resolution to declare ourselves an anti-racism conference. And what the Justice and Witness team decided, and the team is led by Reverend Lacey Hunter, and what the team decided was we didn't want a resolution to be a statement on paper, but we wanted it to be an action of the conference, that the conference was actively involved in dismantling white privilege and white supremacy and working for racial justice. So we created these 4 resolutions came out of that belief that if we work together on specific issues, then we can look at next year or maybe a time later than that to be able to say we are an anti-racism conference because we are doing this work and we're committed to continuing this work. So those 4 resolutions will also be some guiding work for us, assuming that they are approved.
Yes.
So as we're beginning to wrap up, I know that Daniel is going to share a little bit about some of the nitty gritty of what's been going on with our staff.
This has been, as you can tell through this conversation that we've had, so much happens. I think so much happens in the life of our conference in any given year. I think that in this particular time since we met at Sonoma State, so much has happened in so many different ways. One of the things that, of course, all of us are feeling has been the retirement of our longtime beloved former conference administrator, Joy Davis. Every single one of us in this conference has in some way been impacted by Joy's ministry for so many years. And
Yes.
I know for me, Joy was actually one of the first people that I had contact with when I came to this conference as a parish clergy person almost 10 years ago now, because I had reached out to her with some questions. And so that welcome to the conference, that knowing support on the other side of the phone, back when we had landlines and you would just get who was answering the phone, many times that was Joy. And so for so many of us, that has been a huge loss, not just those of us on staff who, certainly we have missed since April, having her presence with us every day, having her knowing history and connections and relationship throughout the conference. Those are not big shoes to fill. Those are larger than that. We had planned, of course, to have this day of joy to recognize and celebrate her ministry, which first was in person and then got pushed to virtual, and then got pushed again because life kept changing. And so during the annual gathering, if you're watching this beforehand, know that we will be having a brief moment of that day of joy during our annual gathering celebration on the 24th. If it's after the fact, go back and look at the recording of annual gathering, which is linked wherever you found us right now, to be able to see that and recognize that it is but a small token of our appreciation for the many ways that Joy impacted us. Certainly, her retirement would have been enough of a transition in the year, but we had another transition in that Miranda Somalia, who had been our administrative assistant for a couple of years, was able to move on to another opportunity in her life, and that allowed Elaine Johnson to join us, first as an administrative assistant and now since Joy's retirement as our conference administrator. It has been an absolute treat to get to know Elaine, to, for me, have somebody else on staff. Miranda and I were the youngest people on staff. Now Elaine and I are the youngest people on staff. In fact, I am now the youngest person on staff, and I am grateful for that, because it, I don't know, is some sort of excitement that brings me joy in my life. But Elaine and I are really two techie-minded people, and so it has been a treat to be able to think through a lot of the ways that we've made some of these communications improvements. She brought an experience in the information technology sector, working in tech in Silicon Valley, to our office to be able to help us through some of those operational things. And that has been such a great asset and strength to us. It has been just a treat to get to continue to work with her and have her energy and her passion and her experience on staff. And while it does mean a total net reduction in our staff, going from 5 full-time staff members to 4, it really has been allowed us to be able to approach that with some intentionality. We recognize that some of the things that we did, we just simply cannot do anymore. And being able to at least do the things that we can continue to do with good efficiency, with good service, being able to continue to deliver on our mission. One of the other things that in staffing is continuing to throw us for a loop, COVID or not, is that as a conference, we called you, Diane, as our conference minister now just over 5 years ago, and you then sought to fill out your staff of associates in that same window of time. And according to the personnel policies of our conference, that means all of us are up for a sabbatical right now, because what wonderful timing that is. And so Davena has already taken a month of that. Both you, Diane, and Davena have completed or are in the process of completing doctorates of ministry. I am a slacker who is not going to join that party, but it is a good time to plan sabbatical. in light of those things, to be able to take some time off. So in the coming year, Diane and I, you will be taking your 3 months. I'll be taking my 3 months. Early in 2021, late in 2020, early in 2021, Davena will be finishing up her 2 months, and so we will be continuing to have some flexibility there, recognizing that each of us as conference ministers will be taking that sabbatical time and coming back renewed into 2020, full steam ahead with all of the energy and renewal that sabbatical can bring us. And so I'm excited, of course, selfishly, but I'm also excited for our conference because I know that each of us will take that time to be nourished and replenished, and come back with even more ideas for us to be able to support, unite, and nurture the conference together.
Mhm. I'm going to turn this off and see if I can get through this part without breaking up. And can you hear me? Am I there?
We can, yeah.
Yes.
Yay. I would like to say that we are grateful for the things that you have done. We are grateful for the victories we've won. I could go on and on and on about your word because we're grateful, grateful, so grateful to all of you. We're so grateful. We're grateful for our conference council leaders. We're grateful for our committee on ministry chairpersons and recorders uh, and all of those who show up on each and every one of those committees. We are grateful for all of you, 113 congregations, 13,000 members. We're grateful. We're grateful for all the ways that you pray for us, all the ways that you pray for one another, all the ways that you show up and show out for one another and for the conference. We're grateful for this annual gathering committee that put together all of this, the worships and the worship services and all the way they led the workshops for the sermon sessions. Oh, what work it was, but we came together. So we're just grateful. We're grateful for our conference minister that works tirelessly, over and over again, late in the midnight hour, early in the morning, trying to continue to do this work that you all have called her to. We're grateful for my colleague Daniel, who just is, we couldn't even do these different settings and these workshops and things because he is our tech guru. He makes sure that everything keeps running and going. And just thank you for your many gifts and talents, Daniel. Grateful for Elaine with coming into a new setting in the midst of COVID, right at the beginning. Goodness, can can anyone step into any kind of way, differently than that? You come to a job and it's so you're learning how to do your ministry. So Elaine, we thank you, and so we're just grateful. We're grateful. We're grateful. We're grateful. We thank you for the covenant that we have, and may we continue to pray for one for another. May we continue to hold this world, and this country, and this nation in prayer. May we continue to fight for those who can no longer fight and fight for those who need us to fight. May we continue to do ministry together. May we be the hands and feet of Christ in our conference, the Northern California Nevada Conference. May we continue to be a part of the greater, wider church of the United Church of Christ. And thank you for all the ways that you've done that. And may God continue to bless you so that you can continue to do more. And now we will have our prayer of thanksgiving from our conference minister.
Before we do that, Davina, we are also very thankful for you, grateful for you, and the way that you show up and the way that you're present in so many beautiful and compassionate and powerful ways with our, whenever there's a question or a need, you're right there. And so willing and eager to respond always. So we are very thankful.
Thank you.
And thank you. Before I pray, I also want to lift up again. We talked about this a little bit earlier, but I want to say thank you to, um, if I listed all of them, the list would be just so long. But from the camp planning committee that was gearing up for a summer camping season and meeting every month with Davina, and we're getting ready for that. And then COVID struck, and we changed. We ended our management agreement with UCCR, so we had a camp interim management committee. And then when we knew we weren't doing camp, we created a camp revision task force. And now that is changing into two different task force, one to focus on the property at CAS and how we're going to move forward with that, and one to look at the overall camping program with or without COVID, and how we're going to be able to offer this important ministry. And the number of people in that CAS Camp Cazadero celebrated its 75th anniversary as our camp. So there was a team that was working on a celebration for that. We had a team that put together a 1-week virtual camp that when we knew that we couldn't meet in person. So there are so many people that have been giving countless hours, meeting every week sometimes. Early on, there were some groups that were meeting twice a week. So for all of those people that have stepped up to help us figure this out when we didn't expect it and we didn't know what to do. And now across the conference, people that are invested in our camping program and people who have not heard of our camping program or have had very little contact with it, but care and want to be part of it, have all come together to do this work. So I'm very grateful for that group too. Let us pray. O Holy One, we thank you. We are so grateful for this conference, for the individuals that give of their time and who give of their wisdom and their knowledge and their resources and their financial resources, who show up when we need it the most. As we figure out the ways that we can support one another in the work that you have called us to do, as we can figure out those ways that we can come together to do those bigger vision things that you are calling us to do. We ask God that you instill in us uh, a motivation and a discernment and an understanding of what it is that you need in this broken world, what it is that you need to bring transformation to the communities and the people who need it the most, what it is that you need that we may continue to love and care for and show compassion for the members of our churches, the members of our communities, the strangers we have not yet met. We thank you, God, for all the ways that you instill in us the sense of community and covenant, the ways that you have brought us together as the Northern California Nevada Conference, for all of our churches, for all of our ministers, for our conference council president and all of our leaders, for our conference moderator and vice moderator and all of our leaders, for everyone who cares, who does this work because you have called them to this sacred work, and who does this work because they care and they see the vision of what we are and what we can be. Thank you, God, for being with us through it all, supporting us, holding our hands, and pushing us when we need it the most. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.